The pot roast was perfectly cooked, just like every Sunday dinner for the past 25 years. My mother, Diana, sat at the head of the table, meticulously arranging her napkin while my father, James, carved the meat with practiced precision. My younger sister, Emma, texted under the table, barely concealing her phone behind her designer purse. Everything looked normal, peaceful, even. But I could feel it, the tension crackling in the air like static before a storm. Sophie, my mother's voice cut through the silence, sharp as a knife. I noticed you're still working at that little bookstore. I nodded, taking a small bite of potato. Yes, I am. When are you going to get a real job? Emma just got promoted to senior manager at her firm. The comparison was nothing new. Emma, the biological daughter, the golden child, could do no wrong. I like my job, Mom, I replied quietly, and I'm actually. Like your job? She set down her fork with a clang. You're 28, living in a tiny apartment, working at a bookstore. Do you know how embarrassing it is when my friends ask about you? My father studied his plate intently, while Emma's thumbs continued their rapid dance across her phone screen. Neither of them would meet my eyes. Mom, please, I started, but she wasn't finished. I've tried so hard with you, Sophie. God knows I've tried. When we adopted you, I thought, she shook her head. I thought I could love you like my own. The room went silent. Even Emma's fingers stilled over her phone. What did you say? My voice was barely a whisper. My mother stood up, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. You heard me. I'm tired of pretending. You're not my real daughter and you never will be. I've spent 25 years trying to mold you into something acceptable. But you're just not. I felt the words hit me like physical blows, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I reached for my bag, the one I'd started bringing to these dinners 6 months ago, when I first discovered the truth about my family. Sophie, sit down. My father finally spoke, his voice weak. Your mother's just upset. Upset. My mother laughed, a harsh sound that held no warmth. I'm beyond upset. I'm done. Done watching her waste her life. Done explaining to everyone why my daughter can't be more like her sister. Done pretending that this experiment in adoption was anything but a mistake. Emma finally looked up, her perfect features arranged in a mask of concern that didn't quite reach her eyes. Mom, maybe you should. No, Emma. It's time someone said it. Sophie, I want you out of this house. No more Sunday dinners, no more holidays, no more pretending we're one big happy family. I stood up slowly, my chair making no sound against the floor. My hands didn't shake as I picked up my bag. Years of preparation had led to this moment, though I hadn't expected it to come quite like this. Nothing to say. My mother's voice dripped with disdain. Typical. Even now, you can't show a hint of backbone. I looked at each of them in turn, my father, suddenly fascinated by his wedding ring, Emma, already returning to her phone, and finally my mother, standing there with 25 years of barely concealed resentment written across her face. Thank you for dinner, I said softly, then turned and walked toward the door. That's it, my mother called after me. You're just going to leave. No drama, no tears. I paused at the doorway, my hand on the knob. What did you expect? I expected something. Anything. You're being kicked out of your family for God's sake. I smiled then, just slightly. No, Mom, I'm being kicked out of your family. There's a difference. With that, I walked out, closing the door gently behind me. As I got into my car, I could see them through the dining room window, my mother gesturing wildly, my father slumped in his chair, Emma finally looking up from her phone with something like worry on her face. They had no idea what I discovered 6 months ago when I accidentally found those old papers in the attic. No idea that I knew the truth about my adoption, not just the fact that I was adopted, which I always known, but the real story, the one they kept hidden for 25 years, the one that would change everything. As I drove away from the house I'd once called home, I felt lighter than I had in years. Let them think they'd thrown me away. Let them think they'd finally broken me. In 6 months, when everything was ready, they'd learn just how wrong they were. 6 months earlier, I'd been helping my father clean the attic when I found the metal box tucked behind old party decorations. He'd stepped out to take a call, and something about the way the box was hidden caught my attention. Inside, beneath yellowed newspapers and faded photographs, I found documents that changed everything. My adoption papers weren't from the agency my parents had always mentioned. Instead, They were connected to one of the wealthiest families in the country, the Andersons. More specifically, I was Catherine Anderson's daughter. The same Catherine Anderson who disappeared from public life 28 years ago, only to return a year later, continuing her work as one of the most successful businesswomen in the country. The same Catherine Anderson who'd recently been in the news for her plans to step down as CEO of Anderson Technologies, with no clear successor in sight. I spent weeks digging deeper, carefully piecing together the truth. My biological mother hadn't given me up willingly. She'd been forced to by her father, who thought a scandal would ruin their family name. The Winters, my adoptive family, had been paid handsomely to take me and keep quiet. The money they'd received, they'd used it to start their successful business, the one Emma now helped run. The same business they'd never let me be part of, always claiming I wasn't qualified enough. My entire life had been built on their lies. After discovering the truth, I reached out to Catherine Anderson through a private investigator. The meeting was arranged in secret, at a small cafe 3 hours from my hometown. "I've been looking for you," were her first words to me. She had the same dark hair as mine, the same green eyes. "For 25 years, I've been searching." She told me everything. How her father had forced her to give me up, how she tried to find me once she took over the company, how the adoption records had been sealed and hidden. "I'm stepping down as CEO soon," she said, holding my hand across the table. "I've built this company into something extraordinary, but I never wanted it for myself. I wanted it for you." Over the next few months, I worked with Catherine in secret. She arranged for me to take business courses online, taught me everything about the company, prepared me for what was to come. All while I continued working at my little bookstore, which was actually a successful chain of independent bookstores I built myself, using the knowledge I gained from watching my adoptive parents run their business. I kept it quiet, using a different name, letting them think I was just a simple employee. The irony wasn't lost on me. The night of that final family dinner, after my mother's cruel words, I drove straight to Catherine's penthouse. "They finally did it," I said, sitting on her luxurious couch. "They threw me out." Catherine's face hardened. "Are you okay?" I nodded, feeling strangely calm. "I am. For the first time, I really am." She smiled, pulling out a folder filled with documents. "Then I think it's time. The board meeting is next week. Are you ready?" "I've been ready my whole life," I replied. The next morning, my phone exploded with messages from Emma. "Mom's freaking out," she wrote. She didn't mean what she said. "Come home." I didn't respond. My father called next. "Princess, your mother was just upset. We can work this out." I let it go to voicemail. Even my mother tried, her message stiff and formal. "Sophie, you're being childish. We need to discuss this like adults." Like adults. As if she hadn't just thrown away 25 years of supposed motherhood in a single dinner. Instead of responding, I focused on the final preparations with Catherine. We reviewed company reports, went over the presentation for the board, fine-tuned every detail of the announcement. "They won't know what hit them," Catherine said, pride evident in her voice. A week after that disastrous dinner, as my adoptive family continued their barrage of messages and calls, the business world was rocked by breaking news. Catherine Anderson announces successor for Anderson Technologies. Long-lost daughter returns to take the helm. My phone rang again. This time, it was Emma. "Sophie," she gasped. You're on the news. You're Catherine Anderson's daughter? How is this possible?" I smiled, looking out the window of my new office on the top floor of Anderson Technologies. "You should ask Mom and Dad," I replied calmly. "They can explain exactly how possible it is." The line went silent for a moment. They knew. All this time they knew. "Ask them about the money they received 25 years ago," I said. "Ask them what they did with it. Ask them why they really never let me join the family business." I hung up, turning back to my desk where Catherine, my real mother, stood with a proud smile. "Ready for the press conference?" she asked. I stood smoothing down my designer suit. More than ready. It was time to show my adoptive family exactly what their disappointing daughter could do. The press conference was a whirlwind of camera flashes and rapid-fire questions. I stood at the podium, Catherine beside me, as we shared our story with the world. Well, parts of it anyway. "Miss Anderson, how does it feel to discover your true heritage? What are your plans for the company? Were you surprised to learn about your biological mother?" I answered each question with the poise Catherine had helped me perfect over the last 6 months. No one needed to know about the tears, the anger, or the years of feeling like I wasn't enough. This wasn't about revenge. It was about claiming what was rightfully mine. The real show began when my adoptive parents arrived at Anderson Technologies the next day, demanding to see me. Security called up, and I instructed them to let the Winters through. It was time to finish this. They burst into my office, looking completely out of place among the modern decor and floor-to-ceiling windows. My mother's perfect makeup couldn't hide her panic, and my father's usual confidence had vanished. "Sophie," my mother started, then corrected herself. "Catherine Jr. We can explain." I leaned back in my chair, taking in their desperate expressions. "Explain what? How you took money to hide me from my real mother, or how you used that money to start your business while treating me like a burden?" "We gave you everything," my father protested weakly. "A home, an education. The bare minimum," I cut in. "While Emma got the best of everything. Private school, expensive cars, a guaranteed position in the family business. Tell me how much of her privilege was bought with the money you received for taking me." They exchanged guilty looks, and I knew I hit the mark. "Where's Emma?" I asked, noting my sister's absence. She's not speaking to us," my mother admitted. "After she learned the truth, I couldn't help but laugh. Your perfect daughter finally saw you for who you really are." "We did what we thought was best," my father insisted. "We needed that money, and you needed a home." "No," I stood up, placing my hands on the desk. "What I needed was the truth. What I needed was parents who didn't make me feel like I was never enough. What I needed was a family who loved me for who I was, not what they could get from hiding me." My mother stepped forward, reaching out. "We did love you, Sophie. We still do. Please, we can't lose everything we've built." And there it was. Not "we can't lose you," or "we're sorry for what we did." They were worried about their business, their reputation, their standing in society. "You won't lose everything," I said, pulling out a folder. "I'm not like you. Inside this folder is a contract. Anderson Technologies is acquiring your company at a very generous price. You'll retain your positions, under new management, of course. Emma, too, if she wants to stay." They stared at the documents in shock. "Why?" my father asked. "After everything we did." "Because 25 years ago, you taught me my first business lesson. Everything has a price. Consider this me paying you back for all those years of raising me. We're even now." Catherine chose that moment to enter the office. My mother physically recoiled at the sight of her. "Mr. and Mrs. Winters." Catherine's voice was ice cold. "I trust to find the terms of the acquisition fair, though it's more than you deserve after what you did." "We'll sue," my mother threatened weakly. "We'll tell everyone how you abandoned your daughter." "No, you won't," I said calmly, "because that story makes you look far worse than it does us. Sign the contract, keep your positions, and we'll all move forward professionally. Or don't, and watch everything you built with that blood money crumble." They signed. As they left my office, my mother turned back one last time. "For what it's worth, I am sorry. Not for what we did, but for what I said at dinner. You were always more capable than we gave you credit for." I nodded but said nothing. Her words meant little now. After they left, Catherine put her arm around me. "Are you okay?" "I am," I replied, surprising myself by how true it felt. "They don't have the power to hurt me anymore." 2 weeks later, I received a letter from Emma. Inside was a photo of us as children, playing in the backyard. "I didn't know," she wrote. "I'm sorry for every time I made you feel less than. For what it's worth, you were always the better daughter, the better person. I'd like a chance to know my real sister if you'll let me." I placed the photo on my desk, next to one of Catherine and me at the press conference, the past and present side by side. My phone buzzed with a message from Catherine. "Dinner tonight? Just us." I smiled, typing back a quick yes. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you end up with. Sometimes the path to finding yourself means losing everything you thought you were. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well on your own terms. I had finally found my place, my purpose, and my real family. And that was worth more than any revenge would ever be.
As he poured cola all over my lap at his grandmother's birthday. "Happy birthday," he sneered while my relatives burst into laughter. I stood there, drenched, the smell of soda and shame clinging to me. No one stopped him. Not even my brother, his father. He just raised a glass and said, "Kids will be kids." My name is Hannah Miles, I'm 32, and that night I learned family laughter can cut deeper than words. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just excused myself, went to the restroom, cleaned what I could, and left quietly while their laughter echoed behind me. Outside, the air was cold, but it felt cleaner than the room I'd left. That night, as I sat in my car, memories swirled. Every time my brother mocked my smaller apartment, every time Mom told me I should be grateful he invited me anywhere. They thought silence meant weakness. But silence was just my way of gathering power. The next morning, I woke up to an alert on my phone, a headline from the local finance blog. Bank repossesses luxury SUV from businessman Daniel Miles after default notice. Daniel, my brother. He had no idea the woman who arranged the audit worked for me. No idea that while he'd been laughing, I'd been documenting, calculating, waiting. And that was only the beginning. Because by sunset, something else would happen, something that would make every single one of them remember the sound of my name. By evening, the group chat was chaos. Mom sent a long message about how embarrassing it was that Daniel's car got repossessed in front of their neighbors. Daniel blamed a banking error. And my sister-in-law, Jenna, wrote, maybe if people didn't hold grudges, karma wouldn't find its way home.
Karma.
The word almost made me laugh. See, 2 months before the birthday disaster, Daniel had asked me to help review his company's books. He'd bragged about his small real estate firm, Miles & Company, and said he needed a second set of eyes before applying for a major loan. I found creative accounting everywhere. Fake invoices, unreported income, unpaid property taxes. When I quietly warned him, he'd smirked. You always worry too much, Hannah. That's why you'll always work for someone else. So I'd kept copies. Every file, every forged signature. And when his laughter echoed over spilled cola, I'd already known what I'd do. At 9 a.m. the next morning, I'd emailed the documents anonymously to the bank's fraud review team. Not for revenge, for justice. But fate had a taste for timing. The car they towed that morning was the same one he'd parked outside Grandma's party, like a trophy. That evening, Mom called. Hannah, tell me you didn't have anything to do with this. Her tone was part accusation, part disbelief. I warned him months ago, I said simply. He ignored me. You should have let family handle family. I smiled faintly at the hypocrisy. You mean like when they poured soda on me? There was silence, then the sound of her breath shaking on the line. For once, she didn't have an answer. But the universe wasn't done yet. Because the next knock on my brother's door would change everything. The next morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Miles, a voice said briskly. This is Officer Whitman with the County Fraud Division. We're looking into some irregularities connected to Miles & Company. Your name appeared in the audit trail as a prior consultant. My stomach tightened. I helped review their accounts months ago. Why? There's been a formal complaint, he said. Mr. Miles claims you accessed his company's data unlawfully. I almost laughed. The audacity was breathtaking. My brother, caught red-handed, was trying to make me the scapegoat. I took a breath.
Calm.
Controlled. Officer, I still have all my written authorization and the email he sent granting access. Would you like me to forward it? A pause. That would be helpful. By noon, the police had those emails, complete with Daniel's digital signature. By 4, the bank's fraud team cleared my name completely and opened an internal investigation into his loan history. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, watching rain streak down the window. My phone buzzed again. Daniel, this time. You think you're smart? You've ruined my life. I'll make you regret it. I typed back one sentence. You did that yourself. Then I blocked his number. For years, I'd carried the weight of being the quiet one, the overlooked one, the good girl who never fought back. But somewhere between the spilled cola and the police call, that girl had vanished. I was no longer part of their stage show of perfection. And yet, even I didn't see what was coming next. Because the next headline that flashed across my phone, before dawn the following day, made me sit upright in shock. The headline hit like thunder. Local real estate firm accused of tax evasion and fraudulent loan activity. Owner under federal review. Daniel's photo sat right beneath it, arms crossed, that same smug expression he always wore at family dinners, now frozen on every screen in town. I stared for a long time, coffee cooling in my hand. I hadn't planned for this. I'd only sent the documents to stop him from scamming the bank again, not to start an investigation that would expose his entire empire. By noon, my phone lit up again.
Mom.
Hannah, you've gone too far, she shouted before I could speak. Your brother's business is collapsing. You should have kept this private. Private. I repeated, stunned. You mean like how he humiliated me in public? Or how he forged client records? You don't understand, she cried. He has a family. So did Dad when Daniel drained his savings years ago. Did you care then? Silence. That was the first time she didn't defend him. Hours later, I got a message from Jenna, his wife. I hope you're happy. We're losing everything. I almost deleted it, but my hand hesitated. Happy wasn't the word. Relieved, maybe. Or free. That night, I walked through the city, lights reflecting off wet pavement. I passed the restaurant where they'd laughed at me just days ago. The same table still had their names on the reservation list. I stood outside for a moment, breathing in the cool air, before whispering to myself, maybe now they'll learn what belonging really means. But fate wasn't done teaching lessons. Because before sunrise, my phone pinged with an email from someone I hadn't heard from in years. And the subject line read, "About your mother." The email came from Thomas Avery, my late father's former lawyer. Just seeing his name made my chest tighten. He'd handled Dad's estate years ago when Daniel convinced Mom to simplify the inheritance. I opened it slowly. Hannah, your father's file resurfaced during a property audit. There's a discrepancy in the asset transfer records, specifically the diner property your father owned before his death. Please contact me immediately. It concerns your legal share. My pulse quickened. I remembered that diner, our childhood home before Dad sold it to Daniel for taxes. At least, that's what I'd been told. When I met Thomas at his office, he handed me a thin folder. Your father didn't sell it, he said quietly. He placed it in a family trust, half in your name, half in Daniel's. But Daniel submitted falsified paperwork after the funeral to transfer the title fully to himself. I stared at the signature. Dad's name, shaky, uneven. Forged. It was dated 2 days after he'd passed. Thomas looked at me gently. You can press charges or reclaim your share. It's up to you. I left his office shaking. All those years of being told I had nothing, of being mocked for struggling while Daniel thrived, it had all been stolen. By evening, my lawyer had filed a petition to reopen the estate. That night, as I sat on my balcony, I imagined Daniel's face when he'd received the court notice. The man who said I didn't belong was about to watch the walls of his empire crumble, piece by piece, and legally this time. But the biggest shock wasn't the property. It was the name I saw listed under co-conspirator.
Mom.
I reread that single word, Mom, until the letters blurred. According to the documents Thomas had uncovered, my mother had co-signed the fake transfer after Dad's death. She'd claimed the diner was part of Daniel's business portfolio and not a family asset. In exchange, Daniel had been wiring her monthly consulting payments for years. It felt like being drenched in that same humiliation all over again. Not cola this time, but betrayal. I sat in my car outside her house for almost an hour before finally knocking. She opened the door, startled, robe wrapped tight. Hannah, it's late. I found the transfer papers, I said. My voice came out calm, almost foreign. Her expression flickered, guilt first, then defiance. You don't understand what your father left me with. Debts, stress, Daniel helped. By stealing? He promised he'd give you something eventually. I laughed, bitterly.
He did.
Public disgrace. She flinched, but didn't deny it. You always wanted to punish us, she hissed. You enjoy watching your family fall apart. Family? I whispered. That word means nothing if you have to buy it. She didn't follow when I turned away. The door clicked shut, and for the first time, it didn't hurt. Back home, I called Thomas. Proceed with everything, I said. No settlements. The next morning, Daniel's lawyer called me. Your brother wants to negotiate. I smiled faintly. Tell him I'll see him in court. When I hung up, a quiet calm settled over me, the kind that comes when the storm has finally found its target. But life has a way of circling back one last time. Because the next message that appeared on my phone wasn't from a lawyer, it was from Jenna, my sister-in-law. He's missing. For a moment, I just stared at the message. He's missing. The irony almost made me laugh. Daniel, the man who thought he owned everything, had vanished when the walls closed in. I called Jenna immediately. She sounded frantic. He didn't come home last night. His phone's off. The police found his car parked near the old diner. The diner. Our father's diner. The same one Daniel had stolen on paper. By the time I got there, the parking lot was cordoned off with yellow tape. Officers milled around, their radios crackling in the morning light. An officer recognized me. Ms. Miles? We found his briefcase inside. We believe he came here last night. The smell of dust and grease filled the air. The place hadn't changed since Dad's time. Checkered floors, faded menus, the echo of memories I'd spent years trying to forget. Daniel's notebook lay open on a counter. Inside, his handwriting, jagged and rushed. I messed up. Tell Hannah, I didn't mean to. I just wanted to make things right before it all fell apart. They found him 2 hours later, sleeping in his car by the docks, disoriented, exhausted, but alive. The investigation would continue, but something in me shifted that day. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. Just clarity. That night, I stood in the empty diner, the neon sign flickering above me. I whispered, "Dad, it's over." Because it was. The lies, the favoritism, the quiet humiliation, all of it had come full circle. But there was still one final thing I had to do before closing this chapter for good. The next morning, I met with Thomas one last time and slid an envelope across his desk. "Transfer it all," I said. Thomas blinked. "All of it? You're sure?" I nodded. "Half goes to Dad's scholarship fund for trade students, the one he always dreamed of starting. The other half donated to local shelters." He studied me carefully. "You don't want to keep anything?" I smiled softly. I already kept what mattered, my peace. When I left his office, the city air felt lighter. The storm that had shadowed me since childhood had finally quieted. Later that evening, I returned to the diner one last time. The For Lease sign was still taped crookedly on the window. I stepped inside, letting the smell of coffee and memory fill the silence. I placed a small photo of Dad and me on the counter, the one he'd kept near the register. Beneath it, I left a note. "For every girl told she doesn't belong, may she build her own table." As I walked out, I noticed a message from Jenna on my phone. "Daniel entered rehab. He asked me to tell you he's sorry." For once, I believed her. Maybe it wasn't redemption, but it was a start. I stood on the sidewalk, watching the sun dip behind the diner's old sign. The letters buzzed faintly, flickering one final time before going dark. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt free, not because they fell, but because I finally stopped needing their approval to stand tall. My story didn't end in revenge. It ended in release. And that, I realized, is the kind of victory no one can repossess. My name is Maren Hale, and I was 24 the night my own family pushed me out into the snow with nothing but a half-broken suitcase. The dining room had been warm, golden, full of the smells of roasted chicken and cinnamon bread, but the moment my father pointed to the door, the warmth vanished. "Get out," he said quietly, the kind of quiet that comes from final decisions. My mother didn't look at me. My sister did. She leaned back in her chair, lips curling. "Let's see how you manage," she smirked, lifting her wine glass like she was toasting my downfall. They didn't even let me take a coat. The snow outside swallowed the door as it shut behind me. Within minutes, my fingers burned, my toes went numb, and the bench at the bus stop felt colder than the ice forming on my lashes. I pulled my knees to my chest, praying my tears wouldn't freeze on my face. That's when I saw her. A woman, barefoot in the snow. Her skin was purple from cold, her hands shaking violently, her hair clinging to her face. She looked at me like she wasn't sure I was real. Without thinking, I slipped off my winter boots and handed them to her. My toes hit the ice, but her eyes softened as if she'd never been shown kindness before. She whispered, "Thank you." 1 hour later, headlights appeared, 20, maybe more. 19 black BMWs surrounded the bench in complete silence. And the barefoot woman stepped forward, ready to speak a sentence that would change everything. Engines hummed around me, low and synchronized, like a warning wrapped in luxury. 19 black BMWs formed a perfect circle in the snow, their headlights flooding the icy street with white fire. The woman, now wearing my boots, stood at the center. But she didn't look cold anymore. Her back straightened, her shoulders lifted, and something in her presence shifted from fragile to formidable. A man in a long black coat stepped out of the lead car and lowered his head to her. Lowered his head to her. Others followed, forming a line before her, waiting, not to command, but to listen. I blinked, frozen more from shock than the weather. The woman turned to me, her voice no longer trembling. "This is her?" she asked the man. He nodded. Then she approached me slowly, her footprints sinking softly into the snow. Up close, her eyes weren't desperate anymore. They were sharp, evaluating. "Do you know who I am?" she asked. I shook my head. A faint smile touched her lips, not mocking, not cruel, but knowing. The 19 men behind her straightened, as if bracing for a command. She leaned in and spoke the sentence that made my heartbeat stop. "You gave your last warmth to the wrong woman, or maybe the right one, because I'm not homeless. I'm the air they've searched for years to find." My breath fogged in the cold air.
Air?
Searched? Her next words dropped like snow-heavy branches breaking. "And from this moment on, you're coming with me." Her words hung in the frozen air, unreal and heavy, like the moment before a storm breaks. "You're coming with me." I stared at her, my breath trembling out in white clouds. Everything about her had transformed, her posture, her tone, the unwavering authority in her eyes. She wasn't the trembling, purple-faced woman from an hour ago. One of the men opened the back door of a BMW, waiting silently. I stepped back. "Wait, why me? I don't know you." Her expression softened, almost gently. "You don't need to. Not yet."
Not yet?
She walked closer and lowered her voice, so only I could hear. "I have everything, power, loyalty, resources, but tonight, you gave me something none of them ever could." I swallowed hard. "What?" Her gaze flickered with something raw.
A choice.
And kindness without expecting anything in return. Behind her, the men watched with disciplined stillness, but their eyes were filled with curiosity, as if I were the anomaly, not her. I hugged my thin sweater to my body. The cold gnawed at my bones, but the shock drowned most of it out. She glanced at my bare feet, still pressed into the ice. "Get in the car, Marin. Your life is about to change." Hearing my name from her lips made something inside me wobble. How do you know my name?" She smiled, small, knowing, unsettling. "Because you're not here by accident. None of this is." The door of the BMW swung open wider. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't a rescue. It was the beginning of something far bigger than betrayal. The warmth inside the BMW felt unreal, almost too soft against my frozen skin. Leather seats, heated floors, a faint scent of cedar, and something expensive I couldn't name. The woman slid in beside me, no longer shivering, instead radiating a calm power that made the space feel smaller. One of the men closed the door, and the car began moving in perfect synchronization with the others, like a convoy escorting royalty. I pressed my hands together, trying to stop them from shaking. "Can you please tell me what's going on?" She studied me for a moment, her expression unreadable. "My name is Arya Voss," she finally said. The name hit the air like a quiet strike. I'd heard it before, whispered in rumors, news headlines, business forums. A missing heiress. A ghost of $1 billion empire. But she continued, her voice calmer than the thoughts racing in my mind. "I disappeared 3 years ago. Not kidnapped. I walked away. Too many lies, too many people wanting a piece of me." I swallowed. "And tonight?" Her eyes softened. Tonight, I wanted to see something real again. To feel the world without cameras, guards, obligations. She lifted her foot slightly, my boot still wrapped around it. And then a stranger gave me the only warmth she had left.
I didn't know what to say.
My family had thrown me out hours ago. Arya Voss, the most sought-after woman in the country, was now looking at me like I was the rare one. She leaned back, her voice lowering. Maren, you passed a test you didn't know you were taking. The convoy turned down a long, private road. Arya glanced at me with a look that made my heart stop. And now, I'm going to give you something your family never did.
She paused.
A future. The convoy glided through tall iron gates that opened as if recognizing Arya's return. Beyond them, snow-covered pines lined a wide driveway leading to a massive stone estate, elegant, silent, glowing with warm lights that felt like another world entirely. My breath caught. This is yours. Arya nodded softly. One of many, but this one matters. Security guards straightened as we passed, not questioning, not hesitating, only bowing their heads to her. I felt impossibly small, yet strangely protected. Inside, the warmth hit me like a blanket. A grand hall stretched out, lit by crystal chandeliers, fireplaces burning at each end. I had never stepped into a place like this, not even in dreams. Arya watched my disbelief, her eyes gentling. Sit, she said, guiding me to an armchair near the fire. My bare feet tingled painfully as warmth returned, but it felt like being stitched back together. She knelt in front of me, a billionaire heiress kneeling before someone like me. Maren, I need you to understand something. Her voice carried a weight that made my heart slow. You didn't just give away boots tonight. You gave away dignity, your own comfort, for a stranger. I looked down, embarrassed. I couldn't watch her suffer. Arya smiled, but there was sadness in it. And that is exactly why I chose you. I blinked. Chose me for what? She stood, motioning toward the hallway that stretched deeper into the estate. To step into a life where your goodness isn't punished but protected. The flames crackled behind her. And the part your family never imagined? Her eyes locked onto mine. You're about to become someone they can never throw away again. Arya led me down a long hallway lined with portraits, not stiff aristocratic ones, but warm, candid oil paintings of people laughing, holding hands, embracing life. Nothing about them felt cold or elite. They felt human. We stopped before a closed door, at the very end. Arya rested her hand on the handle. Before I open this, she said softly, you need to know why those 19 cars came for me. I swallowed. Because you're the heir. Her eyes met mine. Not just that. I'm the only remaining boss. The words hit heavier than the snow outside. My family built an empire, she continued, but they tore each other apart trying to control it. People disappeared, betrayed each other, ran. She looked down at my boots on her feet. I left because I refused to become like them. And then she opened the door. Inside was a vast room, walls lined with documents, maps, security feeds, genealogy charts. At the center, a long table with a single folder placed neatly on top. Arya walked over, lifted it, and handed it to me. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside was a profile. My name, my birthday, my photo, taken without me noticing. Pages of observations. I gasped. You already knew me? Arya nodded. For months. My heart pounded.
Why?
She took a slow breath. Because I needed someone good at heart, someone unconnected, uncorrupted, unclaimed. Her eyes softened. Maren, I wasn't looking for an assistant. She paused. I was looking for an heir of my own choosing. The room spun. My life, the one my family threw away, was being rewritten by the one woman powerful enough to do it. My pulse thundered in my ears. An heir?
Me?
The girl thrown out with a suitcase, barefoot in the snow, mocked at her own dinner table? Arya watched my shock without blinking, as if she'd expected this moment, this exact expression, all along. She stepped closer, her voice a calm thread pulling me back to reality. I studied dozens of candidates, she said. People with perfect resumes, polished faces, flawless manners. She shook her head. None of them passed the one test that mattered. I swallowed. Which test? She touched the boots she still wore, my boots. Giving, even when you have nothing left. My chest tightened. Arya motioned toward the documents covering the walls, security reports, financial analysis, risks, alliances. This empire needs someone who understands humanity more than power. Someone who won't lose herself the moment the world bows to her. Her eyes softened with something like relief. Meryn, the night your family threw you away, you didn't harden. You didn't turn cruel. You chose compassion. A lump rose in my throat. But why not choose anyone else? Why risk your entire legacy on me? Arya exhaled. Because kindness saved my life once. I promised myself that if I ever met someone with the same heart, I'd give them everything I no longer wanted stolen from me. Then she placed a small silver key into my hand.
Cold.
Heavy. Final. This unlocks the Voss inheritance wing, she whispered. My breath stilled. If you take that step, Meryn, your past ends. And a new life begins. The key glinted between my fingers. My family had left me in the cold, but Arya Voss was offering me a kingdom. The silver key rested in my palm like a heartbeat, small, quiet, but powerful enough to rewrite the story of my entire life. I stared at it, my throat tightening, memories flickering one by one. My father pointing to the door, my mother looking through me, my sister smirking, raising her glass like she was celebrating my ruin. My freezing toes on the bench, the woman, Arya, trembling in the snow, and my hands lifting my boots toward her without hesitation. A simple choice. A human one. The only thing my family never valued. Arya watched me closely, not pressuring, not promising, just offering. You don't owe them the rest of your life, she said softly. But you owe yourself a chance at a new one. My fingers closed around the key. For the first time in years, I felt something warm bloom inside me, not hope exactly, but belonging. Arya smiled, almost relieved. Welcome home, Meryn. She guided me down a second hallway to a tall double door carved with the Voss crest. Guards stepped aside. Lights flickered on automatically, illuminating a room filled with velvet seats, antique chests, and a sealed vault waiting for the key in my hand. This wasn't a rescue. It was an inheritance of trust. I turned the key. The lock clicked, deep, echoing, permanent. Behind me, Arya placed a steady hand on my shoulder. Your family threw you away, she whispered, but you were meant to be found. As the vault opened and warm light poured over me, I finally understood. The night I lost everything was the night I stepped into the life I deserved.